My name is Neve Short. I'm the Field School Director at Future Harvest. And most farmers' business models and supplies are undergoing major changes right now. We're seeing increased cost for sanitation materials, increased packaging costs, new delivery and software program costs, loss of or shifting markets. There are a lot of changes that people are facing for their farm businesses. And so we thought that it was a good time to address risk management early on in the season so that you have time to make necessary changes for your business. So we are incredibly lucky to have Tope here today as the presenter. So Tope is a lecturer and advisor for agriculture business management at the Institute of Applied Agriculture. She's a certified public accountant and co-owner of Dodo Farms, which is a certified naturally grown produce farm in Montgomery County. She is also a new board member for Future Harvest, which we're delighted about. And we're lucky to have her here today because she brings both academic and practical experience with financial and farm business management. So before I turn the session over to Tope, I'd like to give you a heads up that at the end of the session, we're going to have a poll and ask a couple of questions. So please make sure to not log off before that happens. And we'll also have some resources to share with you as follow-up information. And as a piece of housekeeping, I will be watching the chat box. So as Tope is presenting, if a question comes to mind that you're afraid you'll forget, feel free to put it in the chat box. And then at the end of the session, I will make sure that your questions get addressed. And I guess without further ado, we'll turn the session over to Tope. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me and for putting this together. These are certainly uncertain times. So I can imagine how everyone is feeling. So the first thing I want to do is to take a quick poll. So if you would do this, if you would go to this website that you can see on your screen, menti.com, and use this, the code 461258, that would really be helpful.
And you can also access the website in the chat box in the link that's there.
And I will start to share what we have for that. So the first question is for you to use one word to describe how you're feeling about the 2020 farming season. Once again, the website is menti.com and you can use the code 461258.
And for those of you just joining in the chat box and on the screen here, you'll see that there is a website to go to answer a few poll questions that Tope has. So feel free to join that now.
Anxious, bleak, apprehensive, tired. Wow. Okay, that's one I haven't heard. Not sure. Somebody's cheating. I said one word. Okay, we have only 9 people. Let's get at least 10, 12 people to let us know how you're feeling. Uncertain seems to be the chief. Whew, apprehensive. I am feeling all of that. Okay, so 9 people, not sure. I thought we could get one more. All right, we have our one more, but uncertain and apprehensive seems to be, okay, so if you would refresh, well, curious, I like that. Because there is really a lot that can happen. So let's go to the next question. And for those I want to see who on the line, if you just refresh that same website, refresh it, you'll see the next question, which is, what was your primary market channel in 2019? One person has answered so far, schools. Wow, schools, cafeterias. We want to see who was going to schools, cafeterias, in the hospital, workplace markets. So if you were going to like the NIH, National Institute of Health market in Bethesda, that is a workplace market. Anything that is restaurants. Wow. Okay. This is interesting. Let's see if we can get a dozen people answer this poll. Farmers markets. Okay. Farmers markets. Okay. Wow. All right. So definitely we have restaurants. We all know restaurants, and restaurants, schools, and workplace markets have the greatest risk going into this season. So I can imagine why people were saying that they felt uncertain and they felt anxious and tired. Farmers market also have a high risk because, as we have probably heard in the news, farmers markets are on, they're essential businesses in most states, but the turnout has been low. So now the feelings make sense. Let's go and see, refresh again, and then let's see what people are planning to do in the 2020 season. What are you planning? What's the primary channel that you're planning? CSAs and online orders. I'm expecting that would go up. And I'm going to talk about some other primary channels that we've seen come up this past couple of weeks when we get on with the presentation. Okay, let's see if we can have 3 more people answer us and see. If you selected none of the above, perhaps you can tell us in the chat box what you're planning to do. Farmers markets. A lot of vendors actually aren't coming to farmers markets, and that's been, a challenge. Okay, thank you so much for taking this poll. If you have any other ideas of where you're going, please send it in the chat box. Would like to see it. All right, so now that we know who is here, let's get on with the business of the day. The first thing is buyer beware. Let me just, put some caveat out there. Agribusiness is risky. It has always been risky. It has always been a risky thing. Every time you cannot predict the exact outcome, the 100% outcome of the scenario, you know that you're facing something that is very risky. So this is not really a new thing, but at the same time, it's also a new thing because it's the first time in our adult lifetime that we're facing a crisis like this. Some people who were working, who were adults when the market crashed in 2008 know that this wasn't as bad. This is the first time that we're facing the biggest combination of a healthcare crisis as well as infrastructure and economic crisis. So all of this together make it really, really risky for us, and which is why this webinar will not be to tell you this is what you can do that would guarantee you 100% results. Anybody that wants to tell you that is lying, because even Warren Buffett cannot tell us what to invest in right now. He can't. He hasn't been through this as an adult. The only thing that may perhaps help us is the fortune cookie. So patronize local businesses and get your fortune cookie. Best of luck with that though. So, but I also want to say a very important figure. 4.43 million people. If you listen to Bloomberg's live cast this morning, that number is not like we weren't expecting it, but this is the reality. 4.43 million people, more people filed for unemployment this week, bringing total claims to 26.5 million. Why is this important for us farmers? It's important because this means that 26.5 million people's ability to pay us has been altered. So we might be in that la-la land of, oh, we're farmers, people would always need to eat. Yes, people need to eat, but 26.5 million people is a significant portion of the people who buy our produce are facing unemployment. So they're going to be making very difficult choices. So COVID-19 brings an increase in the risks, but it also brings opportunities. And my hope in the next 40 minutes is to tell you, to help us get familiar with those risks and to see what opportunities we can tap into to mitigate some of the risks that we're going to face as farmers this season. So the first 2 risks I want to talk about are personal and production risk. The biggest personal risk I want us to think about is, what if you or a key employee falls sick or injured? You might be thinking, oh, I don't do the farm work. Like, I don't do the farm work in Dojo Farms, I don't. But God forbid I fall sick. The management then is slacking. And management is going to be very key, as you'll see in the next couple of slides. So what if you or somebody who does production or management falls sick? What's going to happen? Or you get injured? That's a personal risk that I think farmers need to start thinking about. Another risk is the production risk. Yesterday, I was working from home and I heard the furnace fire on. That's the heat came on. And I was like, what? This is April ending. Why are we still putting on the heat? But if that's any indication, can you imagine on top of the 26-point-something million people filing for unemployment, we have bad weather? We have the kind of weather we saw in 2018. Oh my God, that's just going to, I can't even think about that. And for the person who said they were tired, that just makes me tired. Just thinking about that makes me very tired. So, but this is a possibility and that can affect our production. So what should we do? We might have low yield. Agriculture, the biggest risk in agriculture is low yield. Livestock not performing the way we thought they were going to perform. Diseases, pest, product quality not being good. What can you do to, these are risks that we need to start identifying. The other two risks that I'm going to talk about, ways to identify and mitigate, are the price and market risk. I've already said it, farmers markets are recording very low turnouts, very, very low. And customers are losing their jobs and they're struggling to pay. There is increased cost due to safety standards. I mean, this is insane. Now you have to have gloves, masks, you have to package your products in a way that is not just good for the environment, but also make sure that there's as little contact as possible with the customers. For us who go to farmers market as a primary strategy, this is no longer the market where you display your spinach and people touch something and people, pick your bag and do all of these things. No, one of the things that we had to do was to buy a stand for our credit card terminal so that it's contactless. You want to pay, you have to put your card in something. You don't give your card to me. Now, these things are not cheap. These things increase our price and risk. It increases the profitability risk that we face this season. And of course, the closed channels, the closed market channels, the restaurants, the schools, the hospital cafeterias. Nobody is visiting people in the hospital anymore. And then, of course, there's the financial risk. Many of you heard in the news that the money that was meant for small businesses, well, it finished. And I think right now, Congress is meeting to vote on this new package that they seem to be able to agree upon yesterday. But who knows what's going to happen to that if Shake Shack got all our money and Potbelly, well, we just cannot be so sure. And then a lot of farmers have loans. And some of those loans, either they're due or they are tied to your performance this season, or the interest rate is supposed to change. We don't know. Many of these funders and investors are also facing financial uncertainties, and that may in some way impact farmers. So what are the strategies that we should employ to mitigate this risk that I've talked about? And you might have more risk that I haven't, given an example here. So please bear with me that I'm only giving a few examples just in the interest of time. But what are some of the strategies that I think are practical, are good, that we can employ to, get through this tough time? The first thing I want to tell you is hope is not a strategy. Hey, let me say it in my Nigerian voice. Hope is not a strategy, people. Don't hope. No, please. We have to do, very important things and put concrete steps in place. One of the first things that you have to do is education. Be familiar with what the federal government is giving to you, for you. What is your entitlement? What is your share? Many of us have heard about the stimulus, the 1,200 per family, or per individual, and 2,400 per family based on your income. This is not a gift from any government. This is your money. It's an advance on your tax refund for 2021. It is your money, so you have to make sure that you're getting it. If you haven't gotten your money yet, and this is personal now, if you haven't gotten your money, you might need to go on the IRS website and be sure that they have enough information about you, for you. I personally had to go on the IRS website yesterday, put in my social security number, put in my birthday, and then I realized that the IRS has been taking money from me for the past couple of years, but they don't have my account. They just get my money. They don't know how to give me money. So I made sure that I gave them my account. So make sure you check it. There is the economic injury disaster loan, EIDL, that, ran out, but is about to be replenished. There is the payroll protection. Many of us who are employing people, we need to find out what it is that we can get. Some of these loans are forgivable, and I'm going to talk about the forgivability in a second. But one other thing that I want us to take note of is that yesterday, President Trump signed an executive order to limit immigration, to restrict immigration in the US. There are two exceptions. There are many exceptions, but there are two exceptions I want us to be very familiar with. One of those exceptions is farm workers. So for many of us whose workers or who depend on workers from outside of the US, which is 10% of the farm workers in the US, this is our time to get those workers here to come and help us. Because don't forget the personal risk that you face, that what if your existing workers fall sick? This is the time that you can get temporary workers from someplace else. The other is healthcare workers, because as farmers, I'll talk about personal risk assessment in the future. We need to make sure that we have a primary care physician, that we have healthcare insurance, and we are seeing, doctors. One thing to also be aware of is to be aware of those who pray. Oh my God, every time you put on the television, you can see, I would not mention companies here, but there are two companies that completely drive me crazy. Their advertisement is about, oh, you buy this from us and you don't get to pay for the next 6 months. What about the fine print? You don't get to pay for the next 6 months, but what does that mean in real life? What does it mean? Is it 0%? Does the interest start to count right now and I'm just deferring it? Or are they canceling the interest? We have to be very careful about those who pray. And then when the federal government says a loan is forgivable, please note that all of this is not guaranteed to be forgivable. It's not guaranteed. Before you take a loan from the federal government, state government, or any other government, understand that you must know if you're eligible for forgiveness. That is something that people aren't thinking about. They're rushing to get the loans, but you may not be eligible for forgiveness. So you want to make sure that you sit down, talk to your accountant, and understand the criteria for forgiving those loans before you take them. These last 2 points really, really are close to my heart. And I talked about them in Future Harvest the last time. Manage your expectations. What are you expecting? When I said, say one word about how you feel about this season, people were talking about tired, uncertain. Yes, these are very uncertain times, but we must go into this with some expectations. How much do you think you're going to sell? How much do you need to sell every month to be able to cover the cost that you've already incurred, that you're guaranteed to incur, your monthly rent, your vehicle insurance, the additional insurance that I'm going to advise you to take? How much sales do you need to make? And then you cannot do all of this if you're not organized. There are some insurance products that I'm going to talk about later on, that if you want to sign up for crop insurance, for example, some insurance will tell you, we will pay up to 55% if you have low yield of what you made from this crop last year. If you don't know what you made from the crops last year, how do you think they're going to insure you? So we have to be very organized. This week, one of our potential CSA customers sent an email to me and said, oh, you don't have a pickup point in the place that is near my house. So I don't want to do your CSA anymore. Can I have my money back? I said, sure, you can have your money back. But the problem is she never paid. So if you don't have a record, you are in trouble this season. So I said, you can have your money back. My only concern is that I don't see you in my record of people who have paid. So she said, oh, I'm sorry, my payment never went through. So this really underscores the importance of us really being very organized. What is your break-even point? For our farm, I can tell you how much we've spent on farm equipment, on farm supplies, on chicks and infrastructure and all of that from January through March. This is the season where you must be able to put your hand on your figure, because now I know going into selling season in May, how much we need to recoup some of this cost. So Production risk, so I'm going to talk about different risks and the ways to mitigate different categories. I want to talk about production risk first. So I know many farmers to be very passionate about their craft. I know, I love you guys. You guys do this work for the good of the rest of us, because I'm married to one of them. But this is not the season to be emotional. This is the season to be strategic. And the first thing to be strategic about is, please do not take on additional risk. Take on stable enterprises and leave the ones that are unstable behind. Let me break the hearts of those who get 90% of their revenue from flowers or from dairy. Okay, ice cream shops are closed. We don't know if in the summer they're going to remain open. And if they open in the summer, we don't know if anybody's going to want to get married. And these things are perishable. Dairy farmers are pouring away gallons and gallons of milk. So is this the time to really do something that you might end up pouring away? And then to borrow money to fund it? This is probably not the time. So you might say, maybe instead of milk, it might be meat that I'm sure that people are going to eat. Maybe instead of flour, it might be kale that I know that people want. But whatever example works for you, make sure that you are consciously choosing an enterprise that is more stable than another. With the weather, we don't know if we're going to have any rain. It's a cold April. Right now, my heater just came back on, meaning that it's cold outside. It's a cold April and we don't have enough rain. So perhaps this is the time to think about irrigation. And I asked my husband about irrigation before he left his house this morning. I think he told me drip tape irrigation is the best. Please don't quote me, ask Dodo Farms. But it might be a better time to think about irrigation instead of dry land farming, waiting for Mother Nature, hoping. Like I said, hope is not a strategy. Diversification. When people think about diversifying, they think about, oh, okay, so maybe instead of planting just soy, I might plant hay, soy, and corn. No, we have to also think about diversification in terms of markets. That's why that poll we did at the beginning is very important. Are we going to, farmers markets alone? Well, the lines are short in farmers market. Are you supplying grocery stores? Maybe this is the time to go online and become your own grocery store, and people can pick up from the front of the Giant, the front of the Mom's Organic, or in the farmers market, but you already guarantee some sort of sales before you step into that market and pay for that market rental fee. And I also know that farmers are very passionate, but this may be the time to have a side hustle. And it might not be the main farmer that should have the side hustle. It might be, there's some farms where 3 people are in the family or 4 people in the family and they all do work in the farm. So the father and the son and the daughters are in charge of the production, while the mother or the sister or the father himself is the one who is doing the books. Perhaps it's time to diversify your income and let somebody else work outside of the house so that there is another guaranteed income. Insurance is very key. I know a lot of farmers markets will require you to have product liability insurance before you sell there, but so I won't talk about that. I will talk about other kinds of insurance that we might need to pay attention to. The first insurance for me, the most important insurance for me is self-insurance. And the reason why I say this not just as an accountant, but as a very prudent person, is that some of these insurance companies are also lining up to get bailed out. Some of these insurance companies have invested our premiums in the stock market, which has just tanked like nothing else. So I know we're going to have a little struggle when it comes to us getting our money, and claims will be verified and re-verified, and there will be all kinds of English language being spoken. So what about self-insurance? Which is cash. Cash is king. This is not the time to buy a bigger house because you're all sleeping on top of yourselves. I'm sorry, this is not the time. This is the time to keep cash so that you can bail your business out of trouble before the government gets here. Think about it. If I was thinking about getting $10,000 from the first stimulus that was passed, well, Shake Shack got there before me and Potbelly. I didn't. So cash reserves, cash is king right now. USDA is your friend. The Risk Management Agency website of the USDA, please just put this in Google, you see the risk management website. There are so many insurance products. These insurance products are sold by private entities. However, they're subsidized by USDA. They're guaranteed by USDA. So you might want to think about which part of my production faces the greatest risk right now? And how do I guarantee my revenue? Again, this comes back to record keeping. And I want to keep a note. I want to say a note here. Please don't feel like you have to keep very fancy records. Don't feel like you have to go and install a huge QuickBooks software right now. In actual fact, I always tell my clients that until you understand your figures, the best way to keep your records is a simple cash book. If you were at the Future Harvest seminar last January, if you can see my camera, you'll see this book was given out by the Mid-Atlantic Farm Credit. This may be the only thing that you need right now. Don't feel the need to get fancy, but you must be able to answer a question when somebody asks you, how much have you spent? Please make sure that you do this however busy you are. And, spread your sales. A lot of people are going into this season very anxious. So don't be that farmer who somebody says, you know what? I know you're anxious. So let's have a contract right now. The contract says that all through this season, I will buy all of your kale at $1.50 a pound. And you think, you know what? I might not have anybody else come, buy kale from me. So I'm going to sign this contract. Perhaps you should not. What you can do is to flip that contract around and say, yes, for the next 2 months, you will buy kale at $1.50, because right now maybe kale is, nobody is even buying. I'm just giving an example, using kale. And then after 2 months, we renegotiate the price. Please spread your sales. Don't sell yourself at a loss just because you're anxious. The worst decision you can take right now is to let anxiety rule, and then you sell your entire farmland for nothing, for peanuts. We don't know what's going to happen. Contract sales, the USDA had a call 2 days ago, and this is something that I want all of us to be very aware of. I think on May 1st, they're going to start the request for proposal. And this is something that really favors farmers. If you are a produce seller or grower, or chicken or pork, yes, pork is 3 of these things, the USDA is going to contract a lot of farmers across 6 regions of this country to supply food to food banks in boxes. Please, I'll say that again. The USDA is about to request for proposal. I think the RFP will start on May 1st, and they will give decisions by May 8th. Every 2 months, May, June, July, August, 2 months till December, they're going to contract farmers to supply food banks. There are a lot of, guidelines that I don't want to get into here, but it's perhaps one of the simplest contracts I've ever seen the USDA come up with. It was so simple, I couldn't believe it was a government contract. Now, a lot of bigger farmers who are here, futures contracts, when it comes to hedging and taking options on your commodities, this is not the time to play any market. You have to proceed with caution and with expertise. So I'm not really going to talk about that now, because this is like playing the stock market, and if you don't have the capacity and the knowledge and you don't have a trusted advisor, I wouldn't go there. Flexibility is key, month by month. Yes, you plant spinach the entire time. Well, I'm sorry, it wasn't selling last month. You didn't break even last month. You might need to switch to what other people are selling. So be very flexible. Financial risk tools. This is not the time to sit back while your lender says, oh yes, 5 years ago, you signed a 0% interest rate, and then you also signed that this year it's going to balloon to 20%. I'm sorry, the lender is not paying 20% to the Fed. This is the time to sit down. If you're signing any new loan contract, to fix the rate, and the rates are pretty low right now. And if it's anyone that you've signed in the past, this is the time to have a dialogue. Also, this is the time to prefer self-liquidating loans to non-self-liquidating loans. What does this mean? If you want to take a loan, a new loan right now, it's best to take a loan which the repayment is tied to the proceeds of the collateral sale. Let me give you an example. Let's say you want to raise cow for beef. When you're signing that loan with the bank right now, the repayment should be tied to you selling that beef or you selling off those cows. It cannot just be something that is blanket. It cannot be something that is tied to you selling off your house, that your house is the collateral. No, everybody has to take an equal amount of risk at this point. So if you're not able to sell the beef, they're also going to have to sit down with you to do something. Again, liquid reserves, I've talked about that. Cash is king. Guys, we have to be very careful and make sure that our cash is preserved. Credit reserves, some of us have credit with a lot of banks that we haven't tapped to the full potential. This is the time to sit down with your banker and say, yes, you gave me a facility of $1 million. I've only typically drawn $100,000 in the past 5 years. This is the time I might want to do more because I want to do the USDA contract. But you have to make sure that the terms still favor you, that the terms work for you. I trust banks. I'm sure they're great, but you have to understand that your lenders and your investors are hurting. So any contract that you sign, please make sure that it also works for you and you sign with knowledge and with a trusted advisor. Owner equity. This is something that I think I like to explain in a very emotional way. And what do I mean by emotional? If you ask somebody to invest in you, but you don't want to invest in yourself, it makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. That extra cash that you're keeping, this is the time to put it in your business. If you really believe in that enterprise, if you really believe in it, people want to see you take the first step first before you come to the bank. Another good thing about increasing your ownership in the business is that hopefully, this will pass. If everything you use to grow your business right now or to fund your business is other people's money, they have the right to take their money first before you share in the profit. So this is the time to increase your own stake in your own business. So yes, there's all kinds of 0%, 1%, 2% loans flying around. But the best loan that your business needs is your money. I'm not saying take all of your money and pour it into the farm. No. But I'm saying that you also increase the stake so that when the reward comes, you also have a higher stake in that reward. Legal risk. Let me paint a scenario. So many farmers, they have sole proprietorship. The kind of business is, it's just me, it's my family farm, or it's me and my wife that we're there. That's not bad. It's not bad, except that it can be bad. How can it be bad? Imagine if this market that we're in gets even worse and all of your loans fall due and you have a bunch of lawsuits and everything just gets crazier than the craziness that we're already dealing with right now. If you have a sole proprietorship or a partnership, people can come after your personal assets. I want you to take a moment to think about that. It's as if it's not already hard enough. People can come after your personal assets. That is just crazy. So this may be the time to move to a limited liability company structure. Again, talk to your accountant, talk to your lawyer. But the structure of your business is very important because if the business goes down, the worst thing about your business going down is you going down with it. You're especially high risk if you have any sort of loans, any sort of credit. You're especially high risk because then your personal assets are on the line. Estate planning. For the first time in my life, this week, I did a will. I always thought, I'm 40 something years old. I'm not ready to die. But yeah, I'm not ready to die. But the reality of the matter is hope cannot be a strategy. There has to be something concrete. This farm you're working hard on, this business that you're building that is so great, who gets it? And how are his debts paid if you were to die? This is something that we don't want to talk about, but we should think about. Do you have a will? Is it current? Is it valid in the state that you have done the will in? Very important. And I've talked about liability insurance in the past. So there will be, as much as we think that there will not be, there will be a lot of people who want to take advantage of this situation. People are going to come after farmers markets. They're going to come after farms. They're going to say, I only got COVID-19 after the only place I went to was your farm. The only place I went to was your farmer's market. And that day you touched me, you touched my produce, and then I fell sick. People are going to want to do this. What sort of insurance do you have? In the state of Maryland, for example, I think the premium last year was $300 and something for a $1 million, $2 million product liability insurance. Please do not start this season or continue this season without liability insurance. Personal risk, please have health insurance. Make sure you have a primary care physician. A lot of people, especially, might I say, people of color, please make sure you have a primary care physician. I was watching a video yesterday of a man who passed away, who, when he fell sick, he called a doctor, just called, maybe like the hospital, and they said, oh, your symptoms are not severe enough for you to come get a test. Be home, take lemon and water, and apply steam, all kinds of things. And this man eventually died. Many of our private doctors may not be working as much, but some of them are texting us to let us know that they are still working. And that's because we're not coming. So please have a primary care physician, have health insurance, have life insurance, and safety precautions are perhaps our best strategy for minimizing our personal risk exposure. What sort of, safety standards do you have in your farm? Are people coming to your farm to pick things up and they have to touch a door to your cooling unit? That might not seem like a financial risk, but it is a financial risk. Because they are coming, they touch, somebody else is touching, you're also touching, and then you all fall sick. And then you've lost your revenue. So please have safety guidelines. There are farms that I know that are allowing on-site pickup, that are telling people that you cannot touch the door. So the door is always open. Like I said, we're not allowing people to give us their credit cards. And if you give us cash, you're putting the cash into a safe that you drop your money in, and we're not giving change. So these are some of the things that we're doing just to make sure that, there's safety. And like Montgomery County, I talk about Montgomery County, Maryland, just because this is where I farm. Montgomery County gave us gloves, masks, and hand sanitizers last week. You just had to fill out a form, the Montgomery County Health Department, and say what your farm, if your farm is in the county, and they would tell you to come at a particular time to come pick up a gallon or two or more of hand sanitizer based on your number of staff. Backup management. If you fall sick, who is stepping up? You don't have to spend a bunch of money and commit yourself to hiring somebody right now, no. But start thinking about this. For a farm like ours, I know this is such a huge risk that we're exposed to. I do the management, my husband does the farming. Every time I keep talking to him about what is our backup plan, if you fall sick or I fall sick, this is something that we need to think about. So it might be that we have somebody who can contractually step in if this happens. So this is where I begin my wrap up, my initial descent. And if you see me looking down, that's because I'm looking at my clock to make sure that I don't, spend too much time and leave no time for Q&A. But if you're sitting down and you are in your house or in your farm, I want you to take a piece of paper to start this, but you will definitely not be able to end it yet. And if you don't have a piece of paper, I hope this presentation will be sent out later on. And you can sit down. Yes, okay, thank you, to be sent out. So you can sit down and do this exercise. I want you to take a piece of paper and draw 4 quadrants, 4. In column A, I want you to look at last year's numbers. This is where it comes, where getting organized is important. Look at last year's numbers. What is the revenue that you will lose this year by not going to the school cafeteria, by not supplying the school cafeteria? Maybe it's 100% because the school cafeteria is closed. So how much did you make from school cafeteria last year? $1,200. I hope not. But I've just put examples of numbers here just so that you see what this looks like. Then hospital cafeteria sales, maybe it's going to go down only 80% because the staff still have to eat. So they're going to order less from you. So maybe that is now, what does 80% of what you made last year look like? It's $1,300. What about the farmer's market? Because people are not coming. So you're going to lose half of the sales from farmer's market last year. So let's say last year you made 3,000, half of that is 1,500. This is the revenue that you are potentially going to lose. Like I said, you need a fortune cookie if you want to know this for real. So this is just an estimate from where you're sitting. What do you think is going to happen? Then you go to B. Now that you know you have to have new strategy and new channels, what is the new income that you can tap into? Perhaps you're going to increase CSAs. So maybe like us, we sell our CSA for $500, for example. So now we're going to look for 10 more customers. So that is an additional $5,000. Yours might be different. Your CSA might be $1,000 and you're going to look for additional 20 customers. So that is plus $20,000. You might be planning to bid for the USDA commodity supply contract that I talked about earlier on. So you say, okay, every month for the next 5 months, I'm going to supply them at $400 a month. I hope you're going to do more than that. But if you're going to do more than that, maybe that's $2,000 or however you're going to do, but estimate what the potential new income is. So let's go to C, which is cost. For you to tap into the new income, let me use our farm as an example. We didn't supply restaurants, we didn't supply schools, we didn't supply hospital cafeterias, but we were selling at farmers market. This was our primary strategy, farmers market. And then we had only maybe 2 people in our CSA last year. We didn't really do CSA, but this year, we want to do the USDA contract. This year, we want to increase our CSA. This year, we want to sell online if we can. Now, what are the additional costs that come with that? The additional costs that come with that is that we need to build a high tunnel because we need some more space to farm some of the things that we're going to sell because our farm is very small. So the cost of the high tunnel, we need to put it there. Then the USDA contract is such that they don't want you to bring them 1,000 pounds of potato. No, they want boxes for each family. So how much does it cost us to buy those packaging and to hire people who will bring down the food boxes from our trunk and put it in the trunk of people in the food banks? We need to think about the labor. How much is that additionally? This is something that we didn't have to spend money on before that we now have to spend money on. What about cost savings? For you, it might be that your cost savings that you don't have to pay for fuel to go to supply the restaurant all of the time, or you don't have to pay your extra staff that was standing in the farmers market in the NIH building, the Johns Hopkins building anymore. So what are those things? So when you have put all of these things into the 4 quadrants, your next thing is to say, what is the sum of A and C? A being how much revenue I'm going to lose and how much additional cost I'm going to incur. Add those together. Then for B and D, which is what is my new income potential and how much am I saving by losing the money from A. When you add A and C and B and D, what you want is either they become equal or B and D is greater than A and C. Why? You want to make sure that your cost savings and your new income is greater than the income you're going to lose and the additional costs you're going to incur. This is the planning that you want to plan right now at this point. If you have started the season, please restart it and have this. This is very important. Otherwise, you're going into this season without a strategy. And those who do that plan to fail. Those who do that plan to fail. Those who fail to plan to fail. If you do nothing from everything that I've talked about, if you do nothing, please make sure you do this. If you do nothing, make sure you do this because you want to have expectation. This is you having an expectation into the season. And what an expectation does is that if I know that I'm going to lose 7,000, but I'm going to gain 10,500, what it means is that every month I have something to look forward to. This 10,500, I want to gain it in $2,500 increments. The month I don't make up to $2,500, I will be flexible and do something new. And finally, I have a couple of resources, and I know that Future Harvest has more resources for you as well, but the Future Harvest website is there, and the IAA website at the University of Maryland. Like I said, the best thing you can do right now is to get an education. So I teach at the IAA. I'm the agribusiness lecturer and advisor. So our website is also there, and I've put Montgomery County's rural enterprise development website as well, but for your county, it might be different. So I thank you all so much for your attention, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Tope. That was incredibly informative. Thank you for taking the time to share all of this with participants. So we will go ahead and turn it over to Q&A now. So I guess we have enough people on here that it's good to be conscientious, but we'll go ahead and try to let you unmute yourselves if you have a question. And if that proves challenging, then we can just move to questions in the chat box. So if anybody would like to start us off, please do. Hi, Mark.
Hey, how you doing? I had a quick question. Well, actually, I wanted to elaborate on something that she said. And when it comes to claims and people approaching something from the standpoint of saying, what you had provided me will cause a problem for you later, you do want to make sure that you have your liability insurance in proper order. Because the lawsuits, they will come after everything that you have. I'm actually a risk advisor and insurance agent myself. So I've handled the claims and I've handled the litigation. So I know exactly what she's talking about.
True. This is unfortunately, this is the time when people are going to want to do this. People are desperate. We want to think people are in good conscience, that they will not want to take advantage, but people will. They would trace their sickness to your produce, and they would come after everything. And we cannot be more careful. Yeah. Questions? Questions? Otherwise, I would ask you questions. Okay, well, I'll ask you a question. So by show of hands, if you can show your hand, press the raise hand button, who has started markets this season? Anyone already in markets, farmers markets, supplies, CSA? Anyone? If you can raise your hand to see who is.
I don't see that there's a raise hand button, but people can type it into the chat box.
Chat. Yeah, okay.
So there was a question of, do you see any issues with pick your own vegetables?
Yes. Unfortunately, a lot of people who have joined our CSA this year, this is what they want to do. They want to pick their own vegetables, and there are two existing risks that are amplified by that scenario. The first one is the safety. What about if somebody is sick? They come to the farm, and then not only do they charge the produce, but they also charge other things in the farm. That really is something that, honestly, I think is hard to do this season when there is this health crisis. The second problem with that is that it's very disruptive. I think I was on a Future Harvest call once, and they were talking about how farms can now put signs on their farm to say, this is the time we're open, or you cannot come to our farm. I told you that somebody wanted to get a refund from our own farm. And the reason why they want to get the refund is because they want to come to the farm, and we don't want people to come to the farm because it's disruptive and it's also quite, dangerous. So a way that you could do this is maybe not pick your own vegetables. Maybe you can tell people to say in advance what they want. So if they say in advance what they want, and then you have pickup time in the farm where somebody's name is already spelt out on the produce that they wanted, that they've paid for. Because people will tell you, I want your whole orchard of apples, and then they don't show up. So you tell us what you want, you pay for it, and when you get to the farm, there will be a corner in the farm where your produce is waiting for you at the time that we agreed. That might be a good compromise at this time.
There was another question in the chat box here that says, for the USDA commodity supply contract, do farms have to be a certain size?
No. So the only criteria that was said, and they still, this is something that I think is work in progress, but the only criteria that was set in the meeting that we had, the call that USDA had 2 days ago, was it has to be one of this produce category. It has to be one of these categories: produce, chicken, or pork. No frozen foods, no, flowers, no, it has to be one of those three. And then it has to be grown, produced in the US, because this is to support American farmers. But we would have more details on May 1st. So I wanted to ask Mark a question about the claims and the insurance. If there's anything people need to be doing right now to be sure that if they do indeed have any claims during the season, there will be no problems for them getting compensated.
So I'm not as familiar with some of the USDA programs, crop programs and things of that nature. I'm more on the general liability side. But from a risk management standpoint, everything that you mentioned earlier, as far as controlling as many variables as possible when you're providing product to your customers, is vital, so that you can show step by step, the same way we do when we're washing vegetables and everything. We show our protocols. We can show step by step. So in the claims process, when they come back and say, well, was this, that, and the other done, you can say, yes, these things were followed. These are our procedures. This is what we do with every client. And then, as you further pointed out, even with your merchandising equipment, as far as you're running cards and so forth, having those set so that the person is doing them all by themselves. You're not assisting, you're not handing back and forth cards and scanning them and so forth. Have them do those things, as well as the other things that you mentioned concerning how you're bagging things, how you're recognizing things, and what they want. So there's not a continuous hand-to-hand exchange. You're taking all steps possible. And that's what would be seen as a prudent and reasonable activity for us to do. Somebody can't expect us to be able to float vegetables in the air and put them in their bag. We're going to have to do certain things, but we have to make sure we are doing everything that we can from a glove standpoint, from a bagging standpoint, everything that we can do to assist us. And because what's going to happen in the claims process, when this person comes back and says, hey, I believe I got sick, I was at this market, I did A, B, C, and D, they're going to have to prove their claim. It's not that it's just going to be accepted on face value, but if you don't have your ducks lined up in a row and what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, that's going to be a shortfall. And if you just waste your time by saying, well, I don't think it happened here, you're not helping your case. You have to show that you have these procedures in place. And this is what we do with every customer in order to make sure that we are keeping them safe. And then that way your company can defend you from a product liability standpoint and basically say, we do not believe this occurred and we don't have enough evidence to occur, and they will represent you in court. That's one of the biggest things with your insurance. It's not always that you're going to be wrong for something that you do, but just like you said earlier, people will come after you. And I know this is going to be a stupid example, but I had a company that had a pizza parlor, and it was New Year's Eve or Christmas Eve or something like that. And they were closing up and they made a pizza, and they decided to make an anatomically correct pizza man with pizza parts, with pepperonis and so forth. They actually sent it out by accident, and the person sued for duress. So people can come after you for anything. And it may not work out that way, but have your insurance company be able to stand behind you and say, we're going to represent this case if you pursue it, and then let the chips fall where they may, you are protected.
And one thing that, as he was talking, thank you so much for that, Mark. As he was talking, one thing that I also think I want to emphasize more is we cannot price like we priced last year. We must not price like we priced last year. So you sold spinach at $4 a bag last year, and that bag was £1, a £1 bag. Unfortunately, it's going to be, even if it's $4 a pound, a bag this year, that bag may have to be 0.95 because there are additional costs that need to be covered. that a lot of farmers are going to go on and be excited about business as usual and say, oh my God, we have these people wanting to join our CSA and we're going to do what we did last year. And then at the end of the month or at the end of the year, when you are reconciling your books, you find out, oh my God, this didn't work out because I had to buy environmentally friendly bags. I had to buy a bag for each customer each week. I had to buy, a cooling unit so that I could pace my harvest. There's so many costs that people are incurring right now. And if you're not organized, if you're not documenting what those costs are, we're going to end up having a woeful season. And we don't want to do that.
And would you say in the scenarios where, if so, one strategy is you could put less produce in the bag by weight per item and the price stays the same so the customer doesn't necessarily know, but if a person is raising their actual price, would it probably be wise to communicate to customers that this is a temporary thing while there are additional costs,
So there are two ways to do that, and those two ways that you've said are correct. What is important is that there's integrity in every process. So if customers are getting less, slightly less than they were getting before, communicate that. But I think that is easier for customers to understand than you raising a price. Don't forget the number, the golden number is 26.5 million. If the unemployment claims continue the way they've been going this past 6 weeks, we're going to have another 4 million people join the unemployment market this next week, and that's going to be 30 million. So if you tell them that they have to pay more, they're not thinking that, okay, I just have to eat less. But if you say, you're still getting your CSA share at 500, but instead of 4 items, you're now getting 3. Or instead of 5 items, you're now getting 4. It's easy for people to understand that just as a mental thing. You can also say, you know what, can you pay extra 10 cents for the bag? That might be another strategy so that you can cover the extra cost. They know that the reason why I'm paying more is because this person had to pay for this. So we just have to know our customers and, be appropriate.
That's super helpful. Thank you. And really great strategizing psychologically. So here's a question. Do you think it's smart to plan your 2020 growing season as if shelter in place and restrictive measures will be in place for the entire season? Is the first part of the question.
Yeah. Yes. So there's something that we accountants like to say is the prudency concept. We have to plan for this season with no hope, which is why I said we would have another 4 million people file for employment next week, and another 4 million until we have maybe 50 million people file for employment, and the money will keep running out. We have to plan for the worst case scenario. And what is the loss that can happen in that scenario? If you've planned that there will be shelter in place and the measures will be restrictive, the only way you can go is up. But if you start to hope that, things are going to be good and then we have another wave of coronavirus, well, what are you going to do? You're going to lose your empire if you had one. So this is the way I would do it. But there's one question that Sarah sent before this. She said, first year farm opening, any special advice? Best systems are prepayment and pick up at farmers market. So there are two parts of that question. The first one is first year farm opening, any special advice? Not really, besides everything I've said. The only disadvantage you have as a first year farmer is that you don't have the benefit of experience, which is why you should be joining your hip to the hip of Future Harvest and similar organizations so that you are learning from the experience of other people. This is not the time where experience is your best teacher. It doesn't have to be your personal experience. It can be somebody else's experience. People who farmed at a time when the economy was down in 2008 and 2009 can tell us a thing or two about how they were able to protect their revenue. And how do you find them? You find them with organizations and webinars and events that Future Harvest and the likes are doing. And then in terms of best systems, I think it doesn't get better than prepayment. You don't want to do all of that work. This is not the season where you have this beautiful display in the farmer's market and nobody comes. yes, you still will bring a little extra for those people who just refuse to plan, but it has to be a good balance. You cannot work 24 hours and come out and nobody shows up. This is not that season. So yes, prepayment, encourage prepayment. Even if people don't want to commit to a CSA and they just want to say, you know what, I'm going to see you at Crossroads Market. I'm going to see you at Silver Spring Market, but this is what I want. You want to have those things because it guarantees a minimum threshold of sales for you.
That's great. And so there was the second half to Andrea's question. Let's see what that was. It says, what questions should we ask our insurance agent to make sure that existing liability insurance is covering what it needs to cover during the COVID crisis?
So the first question I will ask any insurance agent or any loan giver or anybody at all is, what exactly does this cover? What am I paying for? What am I paying for? So I'm an immigrant, right? And I came to the US in 2002. One of the things that shocked me the most in my life in this country, and I say it all the time, is that I went to a store. It used to be called Circuit City at the time. So I went to Circuit City, is like what Best Buy is now. And I bought an equipment for my house. This is my hard-earned money. And then they asked me at the checkout, they said, do you want to insure this? Do you want to, in case it gets spoiled or whatever? I said, yes. So I paid an extra foolish tax for that stupid insurance that the equipment ended up getting spoiled and they ended up not replacing it because they told me that it did not cover the kind of fall that my equipment experienced. What? Nobody told me that. You have to read the fine print and you have to know what it doesn't cover. You cannot sign up for a general liability insurance that says in its fine print or says that it doesn't cover claims as a result of COVID-19. And you have a claim that is related to COVID-19. It's very important that you you spend time reading the fine print. Like, you must read it and you must ask questions. Don't sign what you don't understand. We don't have an exhaustive list of risks that we are going to be exposed to this season, but make sure that you ask 1,001 questions based on the risk that you think that you might be exposed to. And if one of them is not covered, maybe it's time to do something else.
There's a question here in the chat box that says, in a place like Nigeria where people do not like to commit to CSAs, is it okay to sign them up and allow them to pay when they pick up?
Well, hello to my Nigerian siblings. I'm glad to see that they're on this call. I've always wanted Future Harvest to do something, internationally. So I'm glad that you're here. Yes, that's a very peculiar market. But what I would say is, yes, they don't want to commit to CSAs for $500 for 25 weeks or 5,000 Naira for 25 weeks. But I would commit them on a monthly basis because you want to also be able to plan. So if somebody says, oh, I'm going to order X, Y, and Z from you, and they end up changing their mind, where does that leave you? You have produce that you can't sell. So you should have a minimum level of commitment. One of the things that we even do in the US here with our CSAs is to say, this is the cost of our CSA, $500, but you don't have to pay $500 now because we know money is hard. So you can pay $250 twice, or you can pay $100 every month, but you have to pay before we begin to supply. So we know that this person has paid $100 for the next 1 month's produce. Because don't forget that for one of the reasons why CSA is good is because it also insures you against you also having the carrots didn't do well. So this month I'm going to be able to give them kale, or I'm going to be able to give them broccoli that the general market might not buy. So you are also, you're hedging two kinds of things, two kinds of risk here, not just the revenue, but also production. So you just have to amend it to your market and make sure that you get them to commit something. There has to be something for them that they have to lose as well. Otherwise, it's going to be a challenge.
I'm going to take a real quick pause to let people know that as we're going through the chat box and there are questions and answers happening, so please do keep putting questions in the chat box. I'm going to launch a poll, which is the question that we were hoping people would answer before leaving today's session. So answer it at your own leisure during the rest of the session. And if you can't find it, let me know, but it should show up in your chat box, or on your screen rather. Okay, so here's another question in the chat box, and it says, does anyone on this thread have a lead on an insurance carrier that would take on a new client right now?
So has this person gone to the risk management agency website of the USDA? That would be the first place that I would go. Okay, so please, that's the first place I would go, because the reason why I would start there is because many of these insurance products are guaranteed by the USDA. So it's the best starting point. You don't want somebody who is also themselves on very shaky grounds.
She says, great, thank you.
You're welcome. So there's a poll, which of the following best describes you? Yay.
And yeah, that'll just be running till the close to the end. So great opportunity for people to still pop in with additional questions.
And I want to say something about, expansion during this season. The truth of the matter is that the higher the risk at times like this, the higher the reward. However, you have to expand with caution. And a lot of farmers are under the illusion of, oh, we are in, the market where everybody needs farmers. Please don't proceed acquiring more land and building more greenhouses and high tunnels just because you think everybody has to eat. You have to proceed with caution. Understand what market exists in the place where you want to invest, and what is the capacity of the market channel to pay. What is the capacity to pay? It's if this was a free market for manufacturers of something, everybody will be producing toilet roll in their house. Mm-hmm. You might get to the point where by the time you're done putting the infrastructure in place, clearing the land, hiring the people, and doing all of this stuff, the market is already rising, and then all of these things are wasting. So you must be very careful and then go for very quick wins. I was discussing with my husband yesterday, the farmer. He's the farmer, I'm just the person who knows the numbers. But I was asking him yesterday, I said, which products are common that a lot of our customers like that have a shorter, lifetime to grow? Because we're naturally grown produce, so we don't use any chemicals or stuff like that. So I said, I want to know what grows in 30 days. And when it grows in 30 days, immediately I harvest it, it starts to grow again. That's what we are going to be asking the USDA that we want to supply. Before I asked that question, I had thought that the thing to supply the USDA was potatoes. So he told me, no, potatoes don't do that thing which you are asking to be done. That now you must be thinking about collards and kale. So be very careful and very mindful of the amount of lead time that you need. Don't grow oranges that by the time your oranges start yielding something and it's already next year, and all you did this year was just to put money down and invest without, getting the opportunities that really present itself.
Great point. Two more questions that have popped up. One is, besides produce sales, are there any effective ways to add or diversify revenue streams?
Meat. Labor. Farmers don't understand that they also sell labor. This may be the time to offer custom farming services. Let's say your entire life was about supplying industries that have gone down. Maybe you were supplying corn to China and that trade route has been closed, for example. Maybe this is the time to take your tractor and go hire it out to other farmers on the Eastern Shore that are growing watermelon. Please don't quote me because I don't know farming, but I'm just giving an example that you might not have to plant something else yourself. You might use your skills and your machinery and charge it out at a rate to other farmers that need you right now. That may be the area that you want to diversify to. So don't ever forget that the biggest asset that a farmer has is labor. After that is machines. So how can you use those two in your diversification? And of course, don't forget meat, chicken. These are also opportunities.
And Emily Zobel, who's an extension agent in Dorchester County, shared in the chat box a resource guide on how to accept SNAP and EBT and WIC payments as a farmer.
And thank you so much for sharing that, because I want to say this. So if you have been accepting SNAP, WIC payments in the past, I hope you have done your certification for the year. Because if you haven't, you will not be able to accept WIC payments. So please, I will send an email to you, to Future Harvest at the end of this call so that you can send it out to people on this call. Please, 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 it's very important that you certify. I think the deadline was this week, but they might be able to extend it. And so for some people who have sent their certification and done the training by mail, a lot of the benefit staff are not in the office. So what farmers were asked to do was that you should scan and send them by email. So I will send all of those instructions. Please make sure that you read the email and that you're very clear on under which conditions they may not cash the checks for you. You might, one of the things to note is how many days, when the last day to present the WIC checks are. These are things that will be, listed, as well as the new safety guidelines and the new policies for accepting WIC and SNAP.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And here's another question. It says, in Nigeria, we have a palliative for small businesses, but due to religious reasons, I cannot take the loan because it has interest. What can we do about credit to support our business?
So I've said it before, and I'll say it again, that the best investment right now is your cash. But what if you don't have cash? CSAs, again, is something that I think we can introduce in some of the developing countries and developing areas, even in the US, in the rural areas where people weren't doing CSAs before. This is a good source of capital for agribusinesses. If people can pay you in advance, you have capital to do your work. So you can start a cooperative in your community and tell people that, look, you're invested in my business, and in return, every week or every month, you're going to get harvest. So this is an easy way in this time that people need to eat that you can do.
And going back to when you were talking about livestock as another way to diversify, it reminded me that I put together a short one-page document that lists the upcoming workshops that Future Harvest will be offering as webinars, and past webinar recordings that we've done. This one today will be included with the past webinars, which is on the Future Harvest website. Let me just link this document in the chat box so that everybody can see it. So this one here. And it also has information about how to become a member of Future Harvest. And if somebody likes the programs that we're offering and would like to donate, there's the option of doing that as well. But we understand it's hard times, so no pressure, just throwing it out there. And so I wanted to highlight specifically the 3 upcoming webinars. One of them is a livestock certification program. So we have a hands-on bed preparation farm for people who are new to farming and you'd like to get some really detailed information about how to set up your beds and prepare them. That will be a great webinar. It's on Saturday, actually this Saturday, the 25th. After that, on the 30th of April, in partnership with University of Maryland Eastern Shore, there's a small ruminant parasite management workshop where people can get their FAMACHA test certification. And it's also to learn about integrated parasite management practices specifically for small ruminants. And then after that, we want you to start a buying club. So it's how to start a meat or livestock buying club for people who are doing meat production, or customers who are interested in figuring out how to start a buying club with their friends so that they can get reduced prices and things of that nature. I just wanted to mention those to you, that they're in the chat box. You can get more information. If you're interested in the small ruminant, the parasite workshop, today's the last day to sign up for that. So if you'd like to get your FAMACHA certification, now's the time to do it. Thanks for the little pause there.
Thank you very much. You know, I also want to say in closing that the most important thing you can do this season, as we face this level of uncertainty, is to plan ahead. Guys, I know farmers are doers, but you have to pause to plan ahead. You must pause to plan ahead. Otherwise, we're going to really have, you know, major hiccups. You have to plan. You have to understand, how much was I expecting this month in terms of revenue? So that the month you were expecting $5,000 and you get $1,000, you know you have to double up efforts next month. You know you have to be flexible next month. We cannot wait until November at Thanksgiving and say, oh my God, this was a lousy season. The lousy season has to be fixed by, you know, May, by June and July. So I know it's, you know, a lot of anxiety and a lot of uncertainty, but just plan and let's, you know, protect ourselves.
Sorry, just real quick that I'd mentioned, it looks like the settings for the document that I just shared were not public. So I've just reshared that document now and it should be public. Apologies for that. And I will do a follow-up email with this recording and the slides from Tope and this document with resources and upcoming webinars so that you'll have access to that. And yeah, echoing what said, I mean, planning right now is really the best time to do it. And we're really grateful that you've taken the time, Tope, to help people think through what that actually looks like and, you know, what steps they should be taking to do a better job of it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. It's been really great preparing for this and delivering it. And I see my student, Lynn. Thank you for joining. And thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.